Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Inner Upgrade podcast, a place where we have meaningful discussions that uplift the lives of everybody who's part of these discussions. Today, I'm so thrilled to welcome Mr. Kamal Bhardwaj to the program. Mr. Kamal Bhardwaj is known to many of you in the community and outside of the community as well. He's known, and he is actually the founder of the Lotus Funeral Home and Cremation Center, but he holds many other roles, important roles, such as the grief counselor, and is involved in healing in so many ways in people's lives. We are so happy to have him on the program, and we can't wait to dive deep into what we're going to talk about today. Grieving, something that all of us do. How do we do it? Is it really real? And if so, when grief kicks in, what do we do? So without any hesitation, Kamal, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled about today's program because I think that's something that you and I have in common is we help people to grieve. And in my experience in life as well, people think that they have to grieve alone sometimes. And grieving is only at a certain, moment of their life. So today we're gonna pretty much do a bit of a deep dive into things. The role that you're in, being involved in the lives of people who lose dear ones. I mean, when we lose our phone, we get so confused in life. We lose our wallet, forget about it. Everything isn't there. When someone loses a dear one, it's got to be deep. And before we even delve into what I want to talk about, or what is, when somebody calls you and they're in that grieving state, they've lost somebody, you are responsible now for the whole process. You have to help that family through for the rest of the stages. What is the first thing comes to your mind, and how do you help that family?
The first thing really is to really truly understand what that person is going through. What I mean by that is, that moment, the grief is going to affect people in different ways, right? For example, if it's unexpected, a lot of times they're very angry.
Yeah.
And, so it's a, terrible accident or something like that. And they're angry at everybody, and you happen to be the person they're talking to at that moment. So you have to understand the position they're in. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just been a long life, and there's some, they lived a long life, and it's not as, traumatic for them. But you understand what position they're in, and then you have to show that compassion, right? And at the same time, they're leaning on you for your professionalism. So there's a lot of things we actually have to juggle all at once. We're hearing the situation that's happened. We're taking information down. We're showing them compassion, just, right back, but telling them that we're going to take care of everything. Leave everything to us. We'll handle everything. Because I think that is where the stress is as well, right? Absolutely. When someone passes away, what do I do? Because most of the time, people don't have a plan really for it, right? It happens. Now what do we do, right? So that's where we come in. And once they know that, we'll take care of everything from start to finish. The stress will go down somewhat, right?
Absolutely. And I think what I'm hearing, Kamal, is that, you stretch your hand out there and say, we're here for you, first of all. And that, this may not be something that they're an expert in or have exposure to, but that's where you come in. And that's amazing to know that, you give them that sort of assurance that we're here. Now, let's reframe grief for a moment here. And what do you think most people think grief is in their mind or in their experience? What do you think they think grief is?
I think society has conditioned a lot of people to think what grief is, right? It's almost like a start and a finish, right? It's like you start here and you finish here, and then grief is over. It's not like that at all, right? I mean, there's clinical ways that people kind of go through this where they say, okay, there's stages of grief, like denial, right? And anger and bargaining, depression and acceptance and all that. It's not so linear, right? People do not go through this. And there's this perception of, grief, okay, it's been a year now, it's over, you should be. it's not like that at all, right? When you lose a loved one, depending how deep that emotion, that attachment you have to that person is, let's say you lost somebody who you barely talk to, it's not going to affect you that much because you really didn't have much of life.
Yeah.
But if you had someone who every single day you're with that person, you have a deep love for them, it's going to affect you in a lot of different ways. So everybody handles grief differently.
Yeah. One of the things I find that should be a crime is to tell someone in grieving that, it's okay, time will heal you. I find that sometimes in my experience, I've lost so many loved ones in my life as well. And whenever someone tells me it's okay, time will heal you, it's like I feel abandoned. I feel like they're telling me, whatever you've lost, you're going to grieve, but I'm not going to be here for you, but time will heal you. And I think that what you said there so much is that, it's not a linear process. It has its ways. There is, in terms of where that misunderstanding come from, in terms of people misunderstanding grief, where do you think that comes from?
So I think there's a few things here. The misunderstanding of grief primarily stems from society's discomfort with intense emotions, right? A lot of it has to do with that, right? The assumption that grief has an endpoint, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a start and a finish. Instead of viewing it as it's messy, it really is messy, right? Because it's like a lifelong adapting, and people often wrongly expect it to be quick and you'll heal quickly, and it's neat. It's not. Grief is very messy.
And how does that belief change the way people actually experience grief?
Well, look, people internalize, and I think a lot of it is false expectations, right? Like the real world mourns in several ways, right? So you have people who basically, the shame and self-judgment, right? Mourners judge themselves for not feeling better. Like I should be getting over this faster, right? There's also other types of losses, like friends and family pull away when a griever does not bounce back in time, right?
Interesting, yeah.
And people suffer in silence, right? So you have grievers, they put a mask on that everything is well, but they're internally falling apart, right? There's delayed processing of this, of the grief itself, right? So there's several things that are going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so important, to have that support, because when you're grieving and people have, that kind of expectation of you that, the funeral is over, let's move on in life. I feel it's such a pressure on those who are grieving as well. There is something called hidden grief. Do you think that people can be carrying grief, let's say, without realizing it?
Yeah. Well, look, of course, especially when there's a loss that's very painful, right? And society is telling one, to move on. The mind buries a lot of emotions, and grief does not disappear. It simply changes, and sometimes leaks out once in a while, right? Through physical, emotional, behavior symptoms.
Yeah.
So yes, to
Absolutely.
answer your question, yeah.
What does that look like, though, when we say, people are carrying the grief without realizing it? It's like, sometimes I'm carrying a flu and I don't realize I'm carrying it, or I'm carrying some disease I don't. But grief is something, you really can't, you can't do a test, like a blood test, to see if that person has grief. So what does that look like in everyday life, where people are carrying grief and they don't even know? Well,
actually there's physical symptoms.
Oh.
Sometimes what happens is people have what they call chronic fatigue, and you're exhausted, you're not sleeping well, you're bearing emotions, lack of energy, sometimes unexpected pain. I've seen people who walk around with their fists clenched like this. They're walking around, my hand's hurting. They don't even realize they're clenching, so much, right? Even their stomach issues, digestive issues, feeling nauseous all the time and things like that. So it can show in that ways. And there's even behavioral things. Like sometimes, you drop your pen on the ground and you flip out, right? Because a little thing like that enrages you, right? There's just like all these things I've
You're just
noticed.
wondering where it's coming from.
Where it's coming from, right? And sometimes people feel numb. Like maybe you have a child and they hit the first home run and you're barely feeling the emotion. You're just like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
But there's that part too. So definitely physical aspects. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And it's a good way of us to, for us to learn that, physical diseases or sickness will manifest, but also something that is not measured physically, like grief. Also, as you said there. Now, I want to talk about why healing stalls. At what point, does grief stop being something people feel?
Mm-hmm.
How at what point it is, and maybe they stop feeling it and they start becoming something that they avoid.
Mm-hmm. So basically, grief shifts from an emotion you feel to something you avoid, especially when the pain transitions from, like a natural wave you endure into a constant subconscious level, right? Yeah. So you stop allowing yourself to process this loss. Essentially, that's what's going on. So this is driven by fear that confronting the emotion will lead to a total loss of control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. I mean, from the experience I've had with helping families who have lost people for so many years, definitely put things into perspective. What are some of the subtle ways though that shows up that we know of today?
Like people masquerade things, right? And they kind of redirect it and it becomes like positive behavior, productive behavior. You have people like chronically just keeping busy all the time, right? Yeah. Again, they don't want to deal with this, so they're keeping themselves busy or fixated on certain things, right? There's extremely organized. They're going to organize things. Again, they're running away from dealing with things, right? They're putting a mask on and they're just trying to keep busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people feel that distraction or avoidance or something like that will make them or take their mind away from their grieving, and avoidance as well in themselves. So let's talk now about the strength versus processing.
Yes.
We often hear people say, "Just be strong," and I've heard this, Mr. Kamal Bhardwaj, like thousands of times. Just be strong. Mm-hmm. And the other one that I talked about as well, time will heal. But let's focus on just be strong. What's the difference between being strong and actually being able to process what you're feeling?
Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, staying strong typically means suppressing emotions, right? Because you maintain a certain facade in front of you, right? In your daily life. In contrast, processing, right? So the grief involves actually feeling the pain, right? Allowing yourself to become vulnerable, right? Making space for the emotions to naturally just come out, right? And heal over time. And it's quite a difference between, right, the approach and dealing with these things, right? Because when you bottle up emotions, like staying strong, you bottle up emotions, right? You're avoiding any kind of triggers, right? That can happen as well. Your mindset is quite different. Mm-hmm. Where processing, you're allowing yourself to experience a full spectrum of emotions, right? Yeah. Sadness, anger, confusion, emptiness, all these things you're feeling. Your mindset is totally different in that and that's processing.
Yeah. And what do you think? What do you think people confuse those two, and what's the cost of that over time?
Well, yeah. So people confuse like healthy coping with avoidance, right? Often people, even society, they reward these kind of behaviors, and to hide pain. And I hate to say it, but even men and women, even society on that alone because men are strong, don't show your emotions. Women are different, right? The society sees them as different, right? More of the nurturing type and expressing emotions and that. So even when it comes to the genders, that is something that also comes up. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you think that it is healthy to suppress grieving? Because it's something that has to happen naturally, I think, right? And what if we just try to like you're talking just about hiding that emotions, that those things can have, in my opinion, long-term, mental and psychological impact in people's lives as well. So I think as we're dealing with this, I want to talk about what healing actually looks like, because we're talking about people telling you just be strong and all these things. So when someone is really moving through grief in a healthy way, what are they doing differently?
So grieving in a healthy way, they're actually actively working through the pain. What I mean by that is they have the balance between this pain and rest. So they allow themselves to cry and feel the sorrow, right? Things like that. But then they can maintain daily activities and routines as well, right? Sleep better and eat better. They express emotions because you're releasing all these things, right? So you're allowing it to release so it can affect your physical way in different ways. You accept the support of people, right? That's very important. That support system around you, your family, friends, very, very important to healing. When you don't have this kind of healthy kind of grief process, then it can be very complicated, right? And the complication can lead to some serious issues amongst yourself, right? So, you can basically go into total isolation, or you get severe physical issues, right? You may even start drinking or doing drugs and all that, because there's a physiological reaction that people can have too, right? So
is it something they're actually actively doing, or something that they are allowing?
Grief avoidance is really a conscious, calculated decision. It's almost always begins as something people allow rather than something they actively construct. So it's like an automatic biological survival mechanism in some degree, right? Your nervous system recognizes that the pain of the loss is too massive to process all at once. So it steps in to kind of shield you. Literally, these kind of things are happening. So the transition from a helpful automatic shield to a harmful habit depends entirely on your awareness of yourself. Right? So, So then I want to talk about the disruptions now. Preparing for life disruptions, because, we prepare for things externally all the time. Our finances, our careers, plans. Can people actually prepare internally for something like grief or emotional disruption? You can prepare eternally, right? You can't predict exactly how grief will feel, but psychologically preparation, you can have that, right? What you do, sometimes you build a framework in your mind that kind of softens the impact of the emotions that you're going to go through, right? And it kind of even helps with the trauma as well, right? Because you're preparing for this, right? So like some mechanics of internal preparation, it isn't really about avoiding the pain of grief, but rather building the mental, emotional resilience to kind of navigate through this process, right?
Absolutely. And what would that even look like in terms of some preparations?
Well, like sometimes in facing a known upcoming loss, right? Somebody's terminally ill or something like that. Intentionally leaning into your emotions, right? Beforehand can lessen the initial shock, right? So acknowledge what is changing rather than resisting the reality, right?
Absolutely.
Like, these kind of things are good practices, right? So you're basically building almost like a pathway, emotional pathway in your mind, right? For this oncoming situation that's going to come.
That's so interesting, and it makes so much sense, because I think the point that you made about the terminally, you know somebody's terminally ill.
Mm-hmm.
You know that not too long from now this is going to happen. When it happens, it shouldn't be a shock because you know that's going to happen, and how we prepare for that.
Yes.
And, you so wonderfully talked about that there. Are there conversations people avoid having that would make a difference later?
Yes. Well, look, grief completely shatters and rewires how people view themselves, right?
Yeah.
So it triggers a profound, almost like an identity crisis in people, right? When you lose somebody.
Yeah.
When there's a major loss, your entire framework of who you are disrupted, forcing you to view like within yourself, right? Through a completely different lens.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's talk about the identity shift. Each of us have an identity. I have, you have, everybody have in some way in their life. And one would think that, when we go into grieving, there may be a need for this kind of identity shift. So does grief change how people, let's say, see themselves?
Yes. Well, look, your assumptions about how your life would unfold, literally, right? You didn't just lose a person in the present, right? You lost the next 10, 30, 40 years, right? Because of the shared plans, retirement, trips, all these milestones that you're going to hit, live in your life, right? So your mental roadmap of the future is literally erased.
Yeah.
So leaving you standing at almost like a blank space, no idea, how am I going to steer through life?
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of things that do happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. What part of someone's identity tend to get shaken the most when, and why does that feel so, sometimes disorienting when that identity shift happens?
You spend a lifetime almost building your identity, right?
That's so true.
And and when that shatters, let's look at a husband and wife, right? Yeah. You've been married 30, 40 years. Your identity is if the husband dies, you're Mr. and Mrs. Smith, for example, right? Mr. and Mrs. Singh. And now you've lost your husband. Who am I? Am I still the wife of Mr. Singh? We were a couple. We did things together, right? We went to a couple dinners together. We were always together, right? Yeah. What do I do now, right? Who am I now? I'm no longer a spouse to somebody.
That's a good way to. That's such a nice way to frame it. It's like, you've lost. You said it. You've lost part of your identity, and it's not something that I think a lot of us are really prepared for. That's great. The turning point. There's got to be a turning point at some point here. So is there a moment in this whole process where someone shifts from just carrying grief to actually beginning to process it?
Right.
Because I don't want to carry it all my life.
Yeah. Well, there is kind of a moment exists, but it rarely looks like the dramatic breakthrough kind of thing, right? Instead, it's a shift from just carrying grief to actually processing it.
Yeah.
Something happens in quietness, sometime in uncomfortable instances. The moment you stop trying to, outrun the feeling, just to sit still and to really process this thing, right? So carrying grief is a passive endurance, all right, is holding your breath and, bracing your muscles and trying to survive this big weight of the loss, right? So processing grief is active engagement, right? It's a moment you finally exhale and allow, the weight to land. Yeah.
Is this a decision, or is that what is that a decision, or does it, in your experience and what do you know, does it gradually happen? And what triggers that shift?
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's both. So it's almost like it's operating in a continuous loop, right?
Yeah.
So the overall journey of processing the grief happens gradually. the gradual process is entirely, fueled by thousands of tiny kind of decisions you made every single day. You just don't wake up in the morning and decide today I'm going to process all my grief and heal, right? It's just not like that. About triggering, you asked about something about triggers, right? So the shift merely carrying grief to actively processing is rarely a single sudden aha moment, right? So it is typically a gradual transition that happens naturally over time, right? And it's punctuated by very specific triggers or periods of intentions in your mind, right? So sometimes they're involuntary kind of triggers, right? Comforting emotions, voluntary triggers, all sorts of different triggers that can happen. Yeah.
Now, on the moving on myth that we hear about, it's time to move on. It's like sometimes I feel it's like people are burdened because you are grieving.
Yeah.
Right. And I've experienced this. I've seen this serving the community for decades now. It's like somebody's grieving and it bothers them that they're grieving.
Yeah.
Not knowing that we are wired very differently, we are built differently, we do different things differently, everything we do differently, so we have to grieve differently as well. So the moving on myth, we've seen it. Oh, it's time to move on. Why can't you move on? So it bothers them. It's a burden on their shoulders for something that you are actually going through.
Yeah.
We hear this idea a lot, moving on or move on. Is that even the right goal for us to just move on?
Yeah. Like the word moving on, right, really implies about kind of like leaving the past behind, right?
Yeah.
Pretending it never happened.
Yeah.
And, also a timeline. We kind of mentioned this thing about timeline, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like it creates pressure to get over it,
Yeah.
right? Where it should be more like moving forward, right? Moving forward. So focus on more integration, like it just more acknowledging the emotional weight of what happened, building more a meaningful life with life experiences rather than, moving on.
Yeah.
It's really about moving forward.
That's such a great way to put it, moving forward
Yeah.
rather than moving on.
Yeah.
Forward implies here, you have the will, you have the know. So instead of moving on from something, you're just trying to unburden other people's, from their shoulders. You have a direction, which is amazing. So, so what's a better way to think about this? Like, what does real recovery actually look like in your experience?
So real recovery does not follow any kind of linear pathway in the end, right? Because healing doesn't follow a neat, upworthy kind of trajectory. You have good days, you have bad days. It's almost like a roller coaster ride, right? You're happy one time, you're crying another when you're thinking about the person. So, the memory remains, right?
Yeah.
You feel that pain, right? Especially when you think about that person sometimes, right? But it will soften over time, right? It does. Reality does soften over time. Never goes away, right?
Yeah.
It's always there, but just a new perspective and how to deal with this kind of thing, right? Yeah.
So from grieving to grounding, I think that is the goal in this whole process. No one wants to really grieve their entire life. I've never met a person, who wants to be a victim, to take grieving and to be a victim. Like, it is unthinkable to, there are victims in life who you can spot them from a distance, but I've found profoundly when someone dies, they are deep inside their grieving, and the goal is to go from grieving to grounding, grieving to growth. So after someone has gone through something very difficult, what actually happens, or what actually helps them to feel grounded again, to feel that moment again where they were experienced prior to this grief?
So, like grounding involves really bringing your mind and body back to the present moment, right? Shifting focus away from the overwhelming emotional pain, right? So, and there's ways to engage in all that, right? But it's something that it's a practice, right? Think of it as like stepping out of an intense, distressing mental movie and returning to the physical room you're in, right?
Yeah. I like that. And so what does grounding really mean in practice? We're going from grieving to grounding. What does it mean in practice? And are there small shifts that, can make, a big difference in this process?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways this can be done. I mean, look, meditate and ground yourself for an hour. Meditation is very powerful. And Pandit, you know best, right?
Absolutely.
The power of meditation. These kind of micro shifts, take sometimes less than a minute, right? The physical shift even, right? So you splash cold water in your face, right? Wake up. These kind of things that you can do. Just changing your posture, right? Sometimes you change your posture, drop that weight off your shoulders, right? Because you realize that you're carrying it in certain ways that you're sitting in that, right? So just by changing your posture sometimes, right? Looking straight ahead, right? Without moving your head, actively try to notice these things in your life, peripheral vision. There's all these kind of techniques that you can do, right? Yeah. So yes, there are definitely practices you can do.
Yeah, I remember a great line from the scriptures. I mean, I say this so often when I read the story of the great Hanuman, with him lifting the mountain and flying away with it. And one of my favorite parts of this all is I tell people, the mountains we are carrying are not meant for us to carry. They're meant for us to climb or to admire. Carrying the mountain is someone else's problem.
Yes.
And I find that very profound because we think that sometimes we have to carry the weight and we have to carry the burdens and the mountains. And I know for most people, I'm only going to carry something with me if I'm comfortable carrying it. But if it caused me this discomfort, it could be the most expensive shoes, but if I wear it and I feel discomfort, I'm not gonna carry it with me.
Right.
And I think that's very profound to say that it's somebody else's responsibility to carry it. If it's the higher power, that's highest one. But mine is not to carry that mountain, it's to climb it or to admire it. We're talking about grief and so many tools we have talked about and tactics. How important do you think it is? I mean, most of you, the viewers who are viewing this program, you have probably known Mr. Kamal Bhardwaj as, the guy you see when someone dies and you have that need. But he's actually an industry leader with funerals. He's an educator. He's an advocate for cultural, sensitive bereavement care. So he's built organizations known for compassionate and, personalized service, operational excellence, the whole works. He's actually studied the thing. And I did not know that you're actually an educator and mentor at the Humber College regarding multifaith funeral practices. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. So it's to have that kind of exposure as well. And a grief counselor and has helped so many families grieve. I've seen him in the action because I obviously work with so many families. So help me understand this. How do you think, when a person is grieving, right? We're all surrounded by so many things and people and all kinds of things in life. I believe that they are negative people and I believe they're positive people. I see that every day. I'm not judging, I'm just reporting. Do you think having a positive frame of mind comes from having a positive circle of people? And if you have that positive circle of people, how is it going to help you in grieving?
I tell you something. And I'm going to draw from my own personal experience
Yeah.
in life, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back decades and decades ago. But, essentially, when you're surrounded with a lot of negativity, it's almost like this dark cloud gets over your head too, right? Because everybody's energy is negative around you, and things don't go well for you too, because you're surrounded with all this negativeness all around you, your circle of friends or your business or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I many lifetimes ago, I had to separate that, right?
Yeah.
And then I started surrounding myself with positive people, and it's almost like the gates opened, and all this good things started happening in my life, right? So 100%, I think you need to surround yourself with people who have positive energy, right? Positive outlook on life, because life always has challenges, right? The universe is always going to put challenges in your way. But to navigate through this, you have to be positive. You know what? And good things will happen, right? You will overcome these things.
Yeah.
People who are very sick, right? Either you can go down that negative thought process, right? Or you maintain very positive and that I'm going to get over this. And chances are you'll get over this, right?
Yeah,
especially with the
absolutely.
people around you that are also feeding that same energy to you.
Yeah. Because they're plugging in, or you're plugging into their power, and their power may be a positive or a negative one. And if you're, I look at it like a plug. You take a plug and you like, this is back in the day, like I was born and raised in Guyana. So when I went back, in Canada, we have the 110 voltage. And if I go back there and take the 110 voltage and plug it into a 240, it's just going to blow up my whole equipment, right? So it's so important to plug into the right energies, because you plug into the wrong ones, it's just going to blow you up. And from grieving, instead of grounding, we'll only fall deeper into that process. I mean, you go through this daily. You have a family, you have a business to run, and part of that business, and I know how much you help society and community, like genuinely do that. And I can see that it brings you a lot of satisfaction and harmony within you, because I've known you for many years and your aura is always very positive. How do you, as an individual, separate yourself from, the grief that you see, that you help people with, and maintain such a positive aura?
Well, I think there's a few things. It's not really one simple answer, but number one, the physical, or I should say the emotional attachment, right? These are grieving families.
Yeah.
I did not necessarily know this person and have that emotional attachment to them, right? Yeah. But we're professionals. We're here to support the family and to do these funerals for them. So they're leaning us on our professionalism, right? It is difficult, to be quite honest, when it's someone who's very young, right? And sometimes it's hard to maintain that professionalism, because I'll tell you one particular instance. I remember, this is many, many years ago. This could be 20 years ago or something. I remember it was a very young child, just a few years old, right? And I'm doing the funeral for that family, and we're at the casket, and we're in the crematorium, and that child is lying there, and I'm looking at the child, and all of a sudden I see my own child's face, because it reminded me that person kind of looked like my child at around the same age. Yeah. And then I started getting this emotion coming over me, and the mother of this young child is standing next to me, and the family's all around me, and they're looking at me to what are my next steps. And I'm all of a sudden feeling this emotion coming over me, because it's, so sometimes and then I had to fight internally to keep it together and maintain the composure, because the family's relying on me. And so we had to continue finishing up this part of the process here, or the cremation aspects and closing the casket. But it can be hard sometimes, because it could be a personal connection that you feel all of a sudden, right? And remind you of something and that's the difficult thing, because we're human as well, right? But my wife always says to me, don't bring this at home, right? So you have to check the bag at the door,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Because when you go home, you're not going to talk about all the grief you went through and all the the situations, right? So
exactly.
you have to kind of keep this separate
Yeah.
to maintain this positivity. It's really because you are doing good work. Yes, and I think for me, I think my life is tied with karma. So I know that, and I was told by very learned pundits out there, and it says, with your who you are as a person, and you're born astrological things and all these kind of things. You have to keep doing good karma because it's going to affect your life that way. So I always, and my mother taught me this as well, like do good things for people, because you do a little good thing, it's going to come back tenfold, right? So maintaining that positive helping has always been part of me. But also trying to stay positive is also something that is a good thing as well. So
staying positive in a very changing and what we see as a very disruptive world these days, it's never easy, but I think you do it well. And in my experience, your services to the community has never fallen short. I've been there many times, and I think your staff, even it's a reflection. I've always told you the first time I went to Lotus, as a West Indian, you walk into the premises of the funeral home, and we have so many ways you can greet someone. But when somebody has learned and studied the way to greet a particular aspect of the Hindu community, it's very it's interesting and it's amazing. It makes people feel well. I want to touch a little bit about faith, because my background is faith. I have, I don't go to my faith only in sad times. I live it. On a daily basis, I live it. And having comforted thousands of families in grieving as well, I found that faith is very profound in these times. And faith is something that has never let, in my opinion, anyone down. Never let me down. Never let anyone I know down. How important has faith been to you, firstly? And how important do you think faith is for grieving?
Faith is very important to me. I think it comes down to most people, and including myself, the two most important things to most people is your family and your faith. And I'm no different. But not only faith in bad times, but in good times as well, right? So when you have things are going well in your life, I've always someone who's praying, right? Every Tuesday I do my Hanuman Chalisa, and I do all my every Tuesday I do that, and I ever did. So faith has always been with me through the good times and the difficult times, right? And the losses, right? Or when there's turbulence on the plane, right? you go to your faith. Oh my God, please don't. But no, so that's who you are, right? As a person. In grief, I think there's a lot of comfort because there's a lot of unknown, right? Just even today, before I came here, I knew the family, and the two daughters were at the casket with their mom, and she's going, what am I going to do? My mom, where is she? And this and that. And I said to her, look, she's Hindu. And I said, the soul is everlasting, right? Her soul is not gone, right? Her soul is everywhere. This is her body, right? But her soul, it's in your mind, it's in your heart, it's energy, it's out there, it's forever. And so she's always going to be with you, right? Because God is with her, right? And this lady who passed away was also very person of the faith as well, had strong, her faith in Hinduism, very strong in this and that. So no matter what the religion is, right? Your faith in that. Because when it's unknown things, right? There's comfort in knowing that the person is in a good place, right? They're with God, they're with their loved ones, whatever the case may be. It's feeling comfort, feeling at ease, right? And that helps in that kind of grief process as well.
I think that's so very true, and it's deep, because faith is our foundation, and without it, I think we'd be lost. And I've seen many, who are in pains when they turn to something bigger and stronger than them, because we know this, even kings in the past, rulers of the past, even the gods had someone that they looked up to. And I think psychologically, when, and I look at it this way, the kings had gurus and teachers and gods and everything. And they were very strong, very powerful men, and some of them women too. But in your head, when you know that there is always someone, maybe up there, down here, I don't know. Because people have different versions of faith. But when they have some higher power than themselves, it's a great way to feel comfort, to know that, you know what, I'm dealing with so much. I'm the strong, the powerful, the influential one. But there is someone, there's a source that I can draw inspiration from, that I can draw strength from. And it's always very comforting to know that I can go back to that source and draw my inspiration, my strength, and get some answers from. So it's so deep for me, I think, and for a lot of people who I know who have grieved, faith has been so strong in their life. So we talked about family, we talked about faith in grieving, we talked about friends. I think we're getting in a pattern here. So F, family, friends. We talked about surrounding ourselves with positive people, family, friends, faith. I recently did an episode on coping, and I read a research by Oxford University about the maladaptive and adaptive way of coping, which means sometimes someone in coping, they go back to the things that brought them happiness. So for me, if darkness comes in my life, I'll go to my faith. That brought me a lot of happiness. But there's a maladaptive way where if someone is an alcohol abuser, when they come to grieving, they go back to, and they just get drowned in the bottle. And I don't judge anybody for that, but it just speaks volume to know that when we hold on to something very profound, then grieving, it helps with our grieving, like faith, family, friends. And in there as well, in the study, they say there is nothing wrong in having fun when you're grieving. There's nothing. So faith, family, friends, fun. 4 Fs. Do you think that it is wrong to have fun if you're grieving?
No, because laughter is part of it, right?
There you go.
Because when people get together,
yeah,
and I've gone through it because not too long ago, my father-in-law passed away, right?
Yeah.
And what happened was at some point later on, we were all sitting around the house and sharing stories and laughing at some of the things of the stories that we're sharing, right? So people feel better when you can share stories and when you laugh, because you're releasing emotions as well. Remember, laughter is part of is the stress, is part of the grieving process, right? Because you're sharing emotions, and obviously laughing is a part of the emotion. So it is a roller coaster ride, right? Because some days you might be good and laughing, other days you might be crying and that, right? But the fact is that you're dealing with it and you're allowing yourself to feel. I think is a key part of this as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong in having fun. In a very nice, clean way. And the last, I like 5 more than 4. So I have faith, family, friends, fun, food. Mm-hmm. People, to cope and to deal with grief, sometimes people go to food, and it could be abusing food, or it could be eating to cope. And I mean, it could be so many things, and everybody have their struggles. I don't even judge that, but how important food is I know you're very strict with your food, because we've gone to dinners before. I remember this. And when it's after, you don't eat. I mean, you came to one of our black tie dinners and you were like, I'm fasting. And that was it. So food is a big part of your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's for health for me, right? You get older in life and you're trying to cut your amount of fat you eat, or sweets or sugars and this and that. So that's my workout plan, because I have a trainer and a strict diet and that. But the food part, I think in anything in life, you have to be careful, right? Because it's okay to enjoy food and have a balance of life, right? Because people will eat the food that maybe the loved one who passed away loved to eat. So everyone's going to eat this food tonight, right?
Yeah.
And this and that. But I think something that's called complicated grief. What that means is if something happens and it manifests because you're not dealing with this grief properly and manifests and it becomes some type of issue. So, you talked about people, you just said someone's drinking all of a sudden, they're doing drugs, overeating, eating the wrong foods. That one actually could be tied with complicated grief, right? So you have to kind of be careful. So food, yes, can be positive, meaning that you're sharing meals together, enjoying life with your friends, you're going out and doing things that you enjoy doing, right? You enjoy, doing certain things in life. Maybe you're a foodie, you like to go out for dinners and that, that's okay. But if you're home alone and you're compulsive eating, you're eating more than you know you should be eating or eating the wrong foods, you just don't care anymore. That could be complicated grief, and that could mean you should actually maybe see a professional before it gets really bad.
Yeah. Because I think most people, that they call it comfort food.
Yes.
Right. They eat for comfort. I've done it. I mean, times in my life, I had no idea what it meant or so.
Yeah.
But I feel that, people who are coping or in grief, they do turn to food sometimes, either as a distraction or to feel good at the moment. And after that, it could have a negative and positive impact in their life. So in terms of support system for grief, someone is grieving, they don't know usually, what support systems are in place. Sometimes they think that they're the solution or friends are. What are some of the support systems that are in place that can help them?
So there are actually professionally run organizations that can help people, right? And sometimes people either don't have friends or they don't want to go to these people, or they're alone, right? And they have no buddy to turn to. So there are professional organizations that there's this Grieving Families of Ontario, just for example, right? And it's not for profit, and you can contact them. And they'll even get you in touch with counselors. A lot of stuff is virtual nowadays. It used to be more in person, but you find a lot more virtual. They even have group sessions because sometimes there's people who don't speak the language. So they actually have professionals that will do it in their language.
Right.
So depending, right? So which language it is. But they're professional run organizations and they help through this grief process, right? Because people need help, right, to move on. Yeah. Especially the fact of like you lost somebody, and let's say you lost the person that did all this kind of thing for you, like paid the bills and looked after the finances and things like that. And you don't know what to do. What do I do, right? Exactly. And they kind of help you navigate through things like that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So we'll probably put that link up in the podcast, the Grieving Professionals of Ontario, so people can have access of that and contact them if they need to, for sure. So, Kamal, in terms of, I've seen, and you've seen as well, where grieving occurs even before someone passes away. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, it's difficult because what happens is especially when somebody is terminally ill or someone who's no longer in the house and they're in a hospital or hospice and they're there for a long time, people in the house are already grieving, right? Because the loss of the person not at home anymore. Yeah. And they know, right? The grief process, it doesn't happen necessarily when the person passes away. Yeah. It starts before that, right? And the house is not the same.
That's so true. And it's just like, I think it adds a different layer to the whole grieving process. Then we have the children.
Yes.
So we lose someone, the children comes into play, and sometimes, a lot of times, you don't have the decision power. So what is your experience with that?
With children, the concept of death, it really differs from their age groups, right? Someone who's very young, right, may not understand the finality of death, meaning like they're never going to come back, right? So their concept, like a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, they don't understand the death, right? Oh, they passed away. They may be sad a moment. Oh, they're going to come back, right? Someone who's older, 10, 12, 13, they understand more the finality of death, right? But they're grieving too, right? And a lot of parents, they will decide, should I bring my child to the funeral or not, right? And the question is, I think a lot of children need to have their closure as well, to say their goodbye to their grandparent, for example, right? To be part of that because they want to be part of it. So I think talking to your children is very important, what they want to do, because sometimes parents make the decision on behalf of the children without even talking to them, right? They're too young, right?
Yeah.
But children can also hold in their grief, and it comes out, right, in different ways, because maybe they're not the same child anymore. They're not talking. It could have been a very talkative kid. They're not talking anymore. They're reclusive, right? They don't talk. So you have to recognize, like, maybe they're not, something is wrong, right? Sometimes sometimes just drawing pictures and expressing yourself in pictures and in writings and that, it should be encouraged because you're expressing emotions, right? And you have to be careful what you say to your kids too, because sometimes when, as parents, you don't realize the long-term effect. If someone is very young and you say to that child, oh, grandma's gone on vacation, right? But she's never going to come back. That child could grow up thinking that term in their head is always there psychologically.
Yeah.
Someone's going on vacation and they get anxious. Oh, they're not going to come back, right? It manifests in that way. So, which I've seen.
I've seen that so many times.
You have to be careful what you say to your kids, right?
Yeah.
They always say be truthful to the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
It's a very tricky situation. Just on that point, I was back home a couple of weeks ago. My sister passed away, and she had a cat, and this cat waits for her every day she comes home at the gate. So when she died, I flew down there and I saw this cat sitting there at the gate, and this cat is waiting for her to come, and she never came. It was a couple of days, and you can see the cat stopped eating, it stops drinking, it's giving up slowly, it's becoming weak and sad because it's missing that person who comforted her. And someone told me something interesting. He said, a friend called me, actually my niece called me from here, and she said, Mike, they say that when you have an animal and the owner dies, they usually take the animal and show the animal the body of the owner, so that when the cremation, now they don't have the understanding to know that there's his death or so, but they will find some closure that when the owner doesn't come back, they will not feel abandoned. And that stuck with me because it's the same thing we're talking about here. Like, do you take children to the funeral home or not? And when they don't see their nana come back again, are they going to feel abandoned? And I think you said it so right with the vacation part. It will stick as something very unpleasant sometimes for them. Yeah.
I think animals do grieve because, even on YouTube, I've seen
Yeah.
where dogs are at the cemetery and they're crying on top of the grave, right?
Yeah.
And the other person's comforting, the human is comforting the dog, right? So they feel it. And, quite often, so dogs have come to the funeral home. I think even the other day, a dog came there. The owner brought the dog who belonged to the person who passed away, and the other family member brought the dog there for them to say their goodbyes too, right?
That is very important.
Yeah,
that's so important, and we can learn so much from that relationship, between the animal and the owner. So imagine between a child and their relative. So beautiful. When we were little, and like if somebody died and they had cows, for example, we used to go keep wake to sing and all that. As you're going in, you see the tears of the cow rolling down from their eyes. So they have emotions because they give emotions to us, but they sense things as well that we sense too.
It's almost like animals have unconditional love, right? Because you're their lifeline.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you're in their family. They love you're part of the family, right?
Yeah.
The animal's part of the family, but it's unconditional love, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, 100%. There was something very profound. I want to read it to you. I found, I don't know who the author is. Let me just read it to you, right? And so grief is not just an emotion, it's an unraveling, a space where something once lived but is now gone. It carves through you, leaving a hollow ache where love once resided. In the beginning, it feels unbearable, like a wound that will never close. But over time, the raw edges begin to mend. The pain softens, but the imprint remains, a quiet reminder of what once was. The truth is, you never truly move on. You move with it. The love you had does not disappear, it transforms. It lingers in the echoes of laughter, in the warmth of old memories, in the silent moments when you still reach for what is no longer there. And that's okay. Grief is not a burden to be hidden. It is not a weakness to be ashamed of. It is the deepest proof that love existed, that something beautiful once touched your life. So let yourself feel it. Let yourself mourn. Let yourself remember. There is no timeline, no right way to grieve. Some days will be heavy and some will feel lighter. Some moments will bring unexpected waves of sadness, while others will fill you with gratitude for the love you were lucky enough to experience. Honor your grief, for it is sacred. It is a testament to the depth of your heart. And in time, through the pain, you will find healing, not because you have forgotten, but because you have learned how to carry both love and loss together.
Oh,
I thought that was so nice. I have no idea who the author is.
That's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. That grief is not a burden you should carry. That's so profound. I think that puts a lid on all of this. If I say anything else, it's gonna distort that. That was so beautiful.
Yeah,
that was so beautiful.
I forgot about that thing.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. So, part of helping with the grieving process is to understand how to do it. But how important do you think planning and communication is involved in dealing with grief?
So I think even stepping a few steps back, right?
Yeah.
Because look, in life, we know one thing's going to happen. We're born. I hear it from your sermons. We're born and we know we're going to pass away one time. When we pass away is up to go on, right?
Yeah.
We could be young, we can be middle-aged, we can be senior. We all hope we were elderly, but the point is it will happen. So I think people are afraid to talk about things sometimes. Mm-hmm. So when life happens, you get caught up in your world, right? So let's say you have a typical husband and wife, right? And it can be either way, right? What I present. Let's say the husband does all the financial aspects of it, right? Looking after the bill payments, where all the money is kept, where the PIN numbers are, right? Where the investments are. Yeah. And then you have the wife who is maybe looking after domestic duties. The husband passes away and she has no idea where anything is because in life, they never really communicated about it, right? If something should happen, this is a book that has all the things. This is where all the bank accounts are. These are all the PIN numbers. These are all the investments. Or I kept it in a safe or, shared it because they communicated about it. So now this person never knew where any of this is. So part of the grieving afterwards, we talk about reinventing themselves, right? Yeah. Now they have to figure out how to do all this because they never had to deal with it. Could be the same the other way around with the cooking. Let's say they did all the financial. They didn't know how to cook, make a bed, deal with their life. And maybe there's no support around them. The kids have moved out of the country. They're living their lives and they're alone here. And, they have no one to help them. And now they have to learn. So it's something that people should think about, right? Yeah. Communication and maybe learning about things about each other or, hey, if something should happen, where would I find these things? Or how do I do? Maybe show me how to cook an egg and make some toast or something simple, or I should learn these things because life is life, right? You don't know what's going to happen in life. So the grieving aspect of it is because when someone passes away, you're going to have to reinvent yourself. You're going to have to learn new things that you never had to deal with before. So sometimes doing it beforehand kind of softens it a bit when the time comes.
So important. I think from what I'm hearing is that, grieving is already heavy and is going to be on your shoulder. And adding those additional unknowns, it just makes you probably feel, so much more burdensome. So one of the things I notice as well in the community is, which I'm helping people with a lot now, is to talk about death. And I think people have this taboo that if you talk about death, it's going to happen fast, right? So I joke with them all the time. I says, okay, and let's talk about money. Maybe it's going to come in abundance, yes. Right? If that's the the idea here, because what I find in my years of service is precisely what you have talked about there, the communication. Like when someone dies, what kind of color would my father want to wear, or nanny wants to wear a nanny? And a lot of people would find that, I'm grieving already. Now I've got to go figure this stuff out. I don't know if I'm making the right decision or not. So I get people to talk about it, maybe to write it down. Just like we're sharing the account numbers, yes, and everything else, write it down and share it with your people so that we know when that comes, you're going to grieve, and whatever time it takes, you're going to take that time. But there shouldn't be things that we could have prevented that's going to add on to your grief package. That makes it so much more burdensome. So communication.
It's key, especially as you get older in life, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're like 20 years old or you're 30 years old or 25 and you're married, you're not thinking about that. But as you get older, and maybe I should do a will. Maybe you should talk about the other things as well. If you're doing a will now, right? You should start thinking about, let's have a communication discussion about, hey, where is everything? What if how do I learn? Can you show me how to, make something?
Exactly.
Cut some vegetables and make a curry.
Yeah.
So these are important things.
Absolutely. That's good. How about where can people find this information? We talk about the Ontario something. We're going to put up that link, right?
Yeah. Grieving Families of Ontario.
Grieving Families of Ontario. Yeah. Is there any other tool we can give people, like any place that we can send them to, or?
Like sometimes what happens is there are like the public forums, like Grieving Families of Ontario, but sometimes with people where they work, they actually have benefits. They have grief counseling that is part of benefits. So sometimes always check with your employer, because you may have actually something in your package that you can actually go to get some counseling for things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kamal, this has been an amazing conversation. I was looking forward for this for a long time. And I know you being here adds a lot of value to what we're doing. And what we're doing here is creating a podcast where people can sit any part of the world and listen on a platform of their choice that brings a difference to their lives. So I want to acknowledge all the great work you're doing for the community, by the way. And the amazing work you're doing for families. I've been there on occasions with families who grieved, who lost children, who lost elders. And I've, of course, watched the way in which you help them grieve. So I want to acknowledge that. And thank you for doing that great work to so many families. Is there any parting message you have for today's podcast?
I think, like in terms of grief, I think everyone should be exercising patience, right? Don't have expectations on people, right? Just be there when you need to be there. Sometimes they don't want you there, but just be patient. And what they're going through, be considerate as well, right? And we talked a lot about this, about time. There's no time, right? From start to finish. And if you're there to help them, right? Because sometimes not being there, right? People tend to be like that, right? Because after somebody passes away, you might be there for a few hours or a few days. But if you're very close to the person, you'll be there for years and years after that, right? So always keep in touch. I find that especially when it's a husband and wife and people were going out as couples, and now there's all these couple events that are going to these kind of parties, and it's always couples. But that one person who's lost their spouse and now they're single, they don't get invited to these parties, or they get more isolated,
Exactly.
right? I think people should be considerate. Like, invite them.
Invite them, yeah.
Yeah, come, it's they're not there anymore, right? With them, but you were all friends,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So be considerate. Put yourself in their shoes, right? I think that's probably a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for coming again today.
Thank you.
I look forward to having you again
Yes.
on the program so we can continue to share these jewels of help to people and, of course, to help everyone elevate. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.